on Eye on Northwest Politics, the race for Oregon governor is in the home stretch as the state deals with a persistent homeless crisis, record gun violence, and unprecedented inflation. The three candidates, Democrat Tina Kotek, Republican Christine Drazen, and unaffiliated candidate Betsy Johnson, are battling for the governor's seat. In our series of governor's race editions of Eye on Northwest Politics, I sit down with each candidate one-on-one. Last week, Democrat Tina Kotek was on the show. This week, it's unaffiliated candidate Betsy Johnson. Eye on Northwest Politics starts now. Thanks for joining us. This is Eye on Northwest Politics. I'm Ken Body. Before I start my conversation with Betsy Johnson, I want to acknowledge President Joe Biden's visit to Portland. At the time we are taping this interview, the president has not yet landed in the city. You can find our full coverage of his visit on KOIN.com. Betsy Johnson is trying to do something no one has accomplished since Julius Meyer did it in 1931. Johnson wants to become Oregon governor, running as an unaffiliated or independent candidate. A businesswoman, aviator, and former Democrat state senator, the resident of Columbia County is trying to break through the political party machinery and the Democrat stronghold on state politics. Betsy Johnson, thank you for joining me on Eye on Northwest Politics.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Well, the polls show neck and neck between your opponents, Democrat Tina Kotek, Republican Christine Drazen. You're about 10 points behind in the latest polls. Do you still see a path to victory here between now and the election?
Oh, I absolutely do. I was one of millions of Americans who went to bed thinking Hillary Clinton was going to be the next president based on the polls, and awoke the next day to find that that was not the case. I think that the polls are an interesting snapshot in time, but this situation in Oregon is so fluid right now, with the national presence of all sorts of the R&Ds, in my view, hijacking what's going on here in Oregon. But I would say that it's a very fluid situation, and I intend to stay in it until the last vote's counted.
What do you think about the national influence in this governor's race? This is looked at as a real indicator of where the country is headed.
Well, that's one of the reasons that I'm in this race, is the pernicious vice grip that the two major parties have on our body politic. I mean, I got into this as a pro-choice, pro-cop, pro-business, pro-accountability person to be the champion and the voice for Oregonians. I think that Oregonians have reached a tipping point. Everybody talks about the urban-rural divide. I think it's been solved. It's been solved by Kate Brown, because both the rural and the urban are so angry, so pissed off at where we are right now, that they're looking for change in a very serious way. And I think that's what my campaign offers, is real, honest-to-God change. What could be more transformational than a governor who says, I'm not going to sign a major piece of legislation, I'm not going to sign a budget into law, I'm not going to make assignments to boards and commissions without some indication of some bipartisanship. That would change the way we do business in this state, and that's what I'm offering.
Is that even possible, given the fact that the legislature is solidly Democrat, and the Democrats and the Republicans do not get along in this state as they don't nationally?
That's a charitable understatement, that they don't get along. I think it is possible, and I think it's possible for the reason that I just said. I believe from my time in the legislature that there are Democrats and Republicans who yearn to work together, to take the best ideas from both sides and to put it into practice and practicality. I think that the tribalism of our partisan politics prohibits that. If somebody comes across the aisle and seriously wants to work with the other side, they're chastised by the home team. You know, if you're wearing this jersey, you got to ride for the brand. And I believe that both Democrats and Republicans on some of the big issues like homelessness would welcome being able to blame the governor. Well, she's forcing us to work together. And they would find cover. No legislator is going to want to go home to their district and see the streets awash in drugs and violence and homelessness and think that they passed a chance to do something about it. I submit that the parties don't have to hit a home run at every at-bat, but you can begin building those trust relationships and incrementally working towards doing business together. I believe it's possible.
Would not having the party machinery behind you be a hindrance?
No, it would be an absolute plus. The party machinery is what's broken. That's what got me into this race. The party machinery has been the dominant voice in our politics, and I think Oregonians want to find their maverick spirit again. They don't want to be told by the party apparatus what to do. And as we've watched it at the national level and we've watched it at the state level, the debate is more acrimonious, the chasm between the parties is more divisive, and what's happening is that Oregonians in this case, or the nation, if you want to elevate this to a national conversation, is getting lost. This is all about the politics, and I want to change that. I want to put people back in the driver's seat.
Last time we talked to you on this show, Phil Knight had just given you $1 million. Altogether, he's given you $3.75 million at this point, but he's also given $1 million to Christine Drazen. He's also given $2 million to a PAC to support more Republicans being elected to the Oregon legislature. What does that say to you?
It says to me that Phil Knight loves this state and that he wants change. That's the clarion call. What it says to me is Mr. Knight and I know each other. I consider him a friend. And when you think about his history in this state, born here, raised here, educated here, started a world-class company here, employs thousands of Oregonians. And I think he's, as a guy that has Oregon in his heart, has looked out and said, this isn't the Oregon that I want. And so somebody asked me the other day, well, did Mr. Knight change horses? My answer is no. Mr. Knight has 2 horses in the race right now. I think he deeply loves this state and wants change, and I'm proud to have the guy with me.
You've been vocal about the state of downtown Portland when it comes to homelessness and crime. This is our first question, our first viewer question. This comes from David in Lapine. What is your opinion on how to manage the homelessness crisis currently plaguing most cities in Oregon? Again, this is from David in Lapine.
Sure. I think my presence in this race is already driving change. I've been very vocal about it, as you say. I have not been hobbled by Portland polite. I have called it out for the catastrophe that it is. And apparently having an independent run is finally now moving people to do something. I understand that the mayor finally has been motivated, and I support him in this, has finally been motivated to begin to put some alternative arrangements in place and get these tents that are strewn all over the city off of sidewalks. But it's taken a lot of public pressure. It's taken a lawsuit that is representing the Americans with disabilities, where people have mobility devices and are being forced out into the street, or people with limited sight, that the tents are a hazard. Some of the mismanagement is finally coming to the fore. I mean, between the city and the county, you've got one of them buying tents, you got the other one scraping those same REI tents up and throwing them away. People are outraged by that. So finally, I think having an independent voice yelling about it has motivated some change, and I'm going to take some credit for doing that. Now, it remains to be seen whether or not the mayor's ambitious plan to aggregate facilities that would have some services, sanitation, food, whether or not the sites that he's picked are going to be acceptable. I would nominate first and foremost the Expo Center. You could put, it's unused right now or minimally used. You could put some accommodations inside. There's a whole parking lot there. The mayor is going to need a political cover and probably some financial assistance to finally bring his new concept into fruition. But I believe my presence and my yowling like a mashed cat about it has helped drive some of the movement. The Democrats are desperate. They own this problem as far as I'm concerned. Tina has passed legislation, driven legislation, that enabled and prolonged tent cities to exist. And people in Portland, but it's all over the state, have had it up to here. They want solutions. Now, I would just add parenthetically that while the 2 other people in this race have been talking about solutions, I've been doing solutions. I helped lead the charge to reconfigure the abandoned, expensive and abandoned Wapato jail into the Bybee Lakes Hope Center, that is now a place of recovery, healing, reintegration for people that are breaking loose from the grasp of drugs and alcohol. It's a place of hope and healing. And so when people ask about my bona fides on homeless, I'll just point to that facility and say, I'm doing it. And now I think my candidacy has helped motivate the mayor. And I hope Tina gets on board. I hope people have the opportunity to say, how do you feel about this, Tina? Because in no small measure, you're responsible for what's happened here.
The other big concern for people in the Portland area and other cities, but we talk about Portland because it is the biggest city, kind of the bellwether city for the state, is gun violence. We've been having a lot of shootings, especially in the Old Town neighborhood over the past several weeks, as in other parts of the city as well on the east side. What's your solution to gun violence? And, you know, we have to say you are pro-gun, you own weapons. What's your solution to this plague of gun violence that we're having?
Well, it's complicated, but let me start at 100,000 feet and drop down. Tina wants to take all your guns. Christine says the status quo is okay. I believe we have to do something. And I would offer that part of that something is, while I'm not going to disarm any law-abiding citizens that are exercising their Second Amendment right to own firearms, I think we need to raise the age limit to purchase certain guns from 18 to 21. And then the thing that I feel the most strongly about is to toughen up background checks. And I would include allowing the schools to bring forward information that might be salient information in reviewing someone's capability to own a gun. We have got to get guns out of the hands of criminals, kids, and the mentally ill. Then the other thing we've got to recognize is that this isn't just gun, no gun conversation. Right now in Portland, a federal racketeering trial is going on that I think will give some insight into the spread of gun violence. It has to do with gangs. And many of these gang members are walking around armed to the teeth, ready, willing, and able to shoot a rival if the opportunity presents itself. So I think that is going to be instructive in saying part of the gun violence is motivated by a deteriorating mental health situation. We're 50th in the country as far as mental health services availability. It is lack of cops to deal with some of the lawlessness that's driving the gun violence associated with gangs.
So you advocate more police?
I absolutely do,
yeah.
Without apology. And I think that some of the legislation that the legislature has passed has hobbled the police when we need them most. At a time when Kate Brown and Tina acquiescing has released over 1,000 rapists, murderers, muggers, violent criminals from our prisons and loosed them onto our streets. And then we're surprised that we have a proliferation of violence and gang activity and bad behavior on the streets. I don't know who she's going to pardon next. Maybe she'd think about pardoning herself, because what I think she's doing is a crime. Portland streets have never been worse, and with her help, they're now 1,000 people more problematic because she's let them out of jail with no contact with the victims.
Let's take a break right now, and we'll be right back with more of my conversation with Betsy Johnson right after this.